We are so back! Welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Lenny. I typically cover TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. It's a new year, new me, new season of Love is Blind, and they decided to drop 6 episodes on me for the premiere. Pour yourself some Love is Wine, which is apparently a thing now. Pour one out for me because the closest Love is Wine to me is 200 miles away. I love the part 1 to my Love is Blind series because it's all my first impressions. I feel like I'm full of hope, full of optimism, and by the end of the season, I am jaded, I am cynical, I hate everyone and everything. And so far, I am enjoying season 6. It feels like a more normal season of Love is Blind, more typical than the train wreck that was season 5. Season 5 just had so many problems. It didn't have any couples to root for. It had villains that weren't like fun TV villains, they were like actual villains. And then behind the scenes, the situations going on were actually really dark, heavy, toxic. Season 5 set the bar in hell, and anything is better than that. So it's off to a good start. They opened the season with Higher Love by Whitney Houston, which I was like, okay, budget. We got a real song instead of just like a fake song that's narrating very precisely the exact situation going on. The only thing I'm nervous about with getting 6 new episodes right off the bat is that most of those episodes are pods, and last season that kind of meant that there was a lot less successful couples than usual. We do have 5 engaged couples that they're showing us as opposed to 3 last season, so at least we're getting the engagements, but I feel like some of them are gonna fizzle out. The teaser for the season at the beginning kind of ate too, because I was like very intrigued. There seems to be in this season a lot of like swappage going on with the couples, a lot of like regrets. The doors to second bliss have opened. And it's interesting how the show has course corrected a bit. I mean, we're in season 6, so this show is maturing. Producers are more seasoned. I'm sure they've learned a lot of lessons. I mean, they've learned to feed them. This season I'm kind of struck by how much they are showing the couples talking about both politics and religion. I mean, from the cast reveal, I noticed a pattern of a lot of Christians this season. I am not Christian, so if you are Christian and don't like criticisms of religion, I may not be the YouTube commentator for you. To each their own, of course, as long as they're not, encroaching on my rights. But at first I was kind of weirded out by the amount of Christians and potentially conservatives on this show. But then I realized, one, I think in the past there's been a lot more conservatives than we've realized because, the editors have conveniently left out any talk of politics or religion for the most part. And it's kind of been a complaint that fans have because how are you going to get married without having those conversations? And then I kind of realized it's kind of exciting to have a lot of Christians just because, people that are religious have a lot of rules for themselves, and rules are meant to be broken, and I feel like it leads to interesting conflict. So at least for entertainment value and TV, that is interesting. Just trying to look at the silver lining here because most of the time I just don't relate to these people at all. So before I get to discussing all of these intricate and messy relationships, I want to give my usual disclaimer that we are just judging people based on very little facts, their personas they are putting forth, knowing there's cameras around. There's a lot of factors that I think separate the personas we're seeing on the TV versus the real people behind all this. So I'm going to be making judgments, I'm going to be making assumptions as I always do, but it doesn't reflect on like the real people. My opinions can change, the information we have can change, so we're just having fun here. It's just reality TV. Don't take it so serious. So spoiler alert, I will be going through every couple in the order they got engaged. And I'll talk about other Pod Squad people as well that the engaged people might have been entangled with when I'm talking about the relevant couple. Because we did focus on quite a few people that ended up not engaged at all. So we will definitely be talking about them as well. That's why, girl, this is gonna be a long video. I warned you from the beginning this time. So we're kind of starting off simple. Let's warm up with Amy and Johnny. They're kind of the most wholesome couple in my opinion. The way I am rooting for these nerds, harder than anyone in Love is Blind history maybe? I don't know. No, I've rooted for couples in the past, but I feel like don't believe anyone's gonna make it to the altar. Even when they have like a really positive edit and stuff, I still struggle. It's such a crazy experiment. It's a ridiculous situation. Like, why would anyone get married like this? But people do all the time, sort of. So it's always nice when in a season there's at least one couple that feels pretty solid, and Amy and Johnny are that couple for me. They were the very first proposal. I loved her cute little dress and the flowers that match that he got her. They're just so adorable, and I fell in love with Amy from the cast reveal because she talked about like learning ukulele during COVID, and as the queen of picking up ridiculous hobbies during the pandemic, I very much related to that. She did not disappoint once I met her on the show, because like the first thing she says is that she's a weeb, basically. No, she really wants to visit Japan. She's into anime. And I was like, okay, she is my relatable queen of the season. And then on top of that, you know, she does her makeup with a big cat eye. She is Latina. She moved to the US when she was 5. I moved to the US when I was 6 from Mexico. She is Spanish and Puerto Rican. I don't think I've ever like seen myself represented more than with Amy on this season. And it's very rare for me on these shows because, you know, like I said, the people on these shows lead very different lifestyles to me. No one is really nerdy or alternative. I apologize in advance. She is gonna be the cast member that I'm gonna be like, protect her at all costs. Hopefully she doesn't do something wild to make me turn on her, but she doesn't seem like it. And so far, her and Johnny are getting a very positive, favorable edit. And Johnny is also pretty nerdy like she is. They connect about Naruto, and they really mostly bond on having very tight relationships with their families. Amy is really protective of her younger brother, who is autistic and has ADHD. She believes she might fall into a caretaker role throughout his life if needed, and she's willing to step up, and she shares that with Johnny, and Johnny is very close with his siblings, so they just really bond over that, and they don't have like other relationships going on in the pods. They're one of those couples that's just like they found each other and they stuck with each other. I appreciate Johnny a lot too, because I think he's the most feminist that I've seen on this season, at least on this season, maybe in all of the Love is Blind. It's tricky and hard to find a feminist in these shows because, you know, most of them are more traditional. But Johnny just seems progressive. He's just so reassuring and comforting to Amy. He's like, I never want to change you. And he kind of slips when he tells her he loves her. He like accidentally says, because I love you, and he's like, oh, whoa, shit, and then she reciprocates, so it's cute, and they both love each other at that point. Also, at some point, he asks her to promise him 2 things. One is if she has a problem with anything he does, that she will let him know, and he can try to fix it, which I think is a really emotionally mature way to approach, especially an experiment like this where you're basically strangers. I think it's nice to have check-ins. And then the second promise is to not let like outside influences mess with their connection once they get into the real world. And she accepts those promises very happily. When they have their reveal meeting, can we just take a moment to admire her dress? I was obsessed with her dress. It was gold with black. Her nails were fierce. I am always looking at nails ever since I developed a nail polish addiction about 2 years ago. Also, she is beat for the gods. By the end of it, she has no foundation left on her nose because they made out so much, and he has just like foundation in the middle of his face. This is pretty common for Love is Blind, but this might be one of the most drastic ones I've seen. But they're pretty affectionate with each other. I mean, he's happy because she is beautiful. She's a little more like, oh, I wouldn't have gone for him in the real world. And that's always such awkward thing about the reveals, like, and it always makes me feel like so anxious. It's just like they meet each other and they're like kissing and making out and being affectionate, but then also like kind of evaluating each other. and realizing like, who's out of whose league here? I feel like when they match looks wise, it's not a big deal, but when they're a little bit like off, there's always one person that's like, oh, and the other person that's like, yay, I got a hot person. I thought this couple was okay matched. I'm being kind of dramatic, but Amy does mention she normally dates ethnic guys and probably would not have paid much attention to Johnny at a bar in the real world. I'm always surprised they like admit this stuff, because this is the person you're like allegedly marrying and they're gonna see the show someday. Maybe they're not thinking that far ahead, even though it's only like 4 weeks ahead when they're getting married. There's not much to say about them in the honeymoons. Like I said, this is the most solid couple. They're pretty wholesome. She does mention again she wouldn't go for him in the real world, but says the physical affection is growing. So that leads me to the question, do I think they'll make it to the altar and to marriage is what I mean. I think Amy and Johnny have the most likelihood of making it this season. If I had to place money on one couple, it would be them. You literally never know with the show, and I'm always so scared to like make predictions, but I think they're solid. They seem healthy. I don't see red flags. They have nice banter, but it's not too much. They seem comfortable. They seem affectionate. The only thing that we did see in the preview is that it sounds like they're gonna have a conversation regarding abortion issues, just because she says something like, so what if we accidentally got pregnant? So I'm assuming that conversation leads to discussing their stances on abortion, and since this season seems to be leaning pretty conservative, Christian, there could be a disagreement between them there. But I could see them, you know, coming to some sort of agreement. So moving on to Kenneth and Brittany. They're our next couple, and they are also simple like Amy and Johnny, but they are Christian as hell. Oh shit, probably not the best choice of words. What gags me the most about Kenneth and Brittany is that they are like the youngest in the cast. They were like 24 and 25 years old. I can't believe these people are Gen Zs. They're babies. They shouldn't be getting engaged. They should be at the club. They initially bond over having to grow up quickly because they both lost a parent at young ages. They're both just super religious and Christian, and they both really want kids. They both specifically really want twins, which I didn't know anyone was like wanting twins out there, just because it feels like a pretty rare occurrence. But then they both talk about how twins run in their respective families, so honestly for them it might be pretty likely that they'll get twins. As far as the individuals go, I feel like Brittany and Kenneth just didn't have much action going on in the pod. Similar to Amy and Johnny, they didn't have drama with anyone. They weren't in love triangles. The only love triangle going on between them is with them and Jesus Christ. I find them pretty boring. Sorry, no shade, but shade. The only thing that stuck out to me about Brittany is that she reminded me of that girl from the last season of The Ultimatum. Raylene, Sarah Lynn, I don't remember her name. But it was that one girl with a very thick southern accent. Ryan, was her name Ryan? Kenneth is a middle school principal, which I feel like is a very interesting job. He's also a worship leader, which Brittany loves that. And the kicker with this couple is that they are so Christian, they are waiting till marriage to do the deed. I was warned about all the Christians, so it was a little to be expected, but like, they're already speeding through the process of wedding planning. Might as well test drive the situation. All I put in my notes is, oh Lord. How do other YouTubers do it without messing up their lipstick? I found it interesting and important that Kenneth and Brittany talked about their race. We did see it play out in season 1 with Lauren and Cameron. I was glad to see it in the pods. Again, I feel like they showed more of the serious topics in the pods this season, and this was one of those moments. Honestly, once they meet in their reveal, it's pretty anticlimactic. Like, there's no surprises because they had talked about their appearances, like not only their race, but she had guessed like, oh, you're like tall but like a little stocky. Their meeting went well. I mean, this couple is super PG, so the honeymoons, I mean, nothing's going on there. The producers clearly attempted to, you know, rose petal the place out in hopes of something going on, but you know, I don't think this couple is the one that's gonna budge. I did think Kenneth had an interesting method. He said like every night he wants to unpack the day with Brittany. This might be something that's kind of like excessive in the real world or once they're married, if they get married, but it seems like a really good idea for this experiment. I think more Love is Blind couples would succeed if they had an honest check-in at the end of every day. And on the honeymoons, Kenneth is like really doting on Brittany once they meet everybody, because they do finish off this batch of episodes with, you know, the party with all the couples in the honeymoons. Anyway, Kenneth seems to be very devoted to Brittany. Even the other girls comment on it and are like, I want someone to treat me like Kenneth, basically. I did think Kenneth had a really important and interesting conversation with AD, and they talked about him and Brittany being an interracial couple and the judgments that come with that. And she also brought up the point of like, you know, Brittany's gonna raise black children if you have children together, and like that's like an important thing she should be aware of. To be honest, I don't know what Brittany's aware of. She just seems very down for everything. That's why she reminds me so much of that Ultimatum girl, because she was just like happy all the time. So I don't know if she realizes like the nuance of all that, but I would hope so. And at least Kenneth says he's very pro-black and very aware of all that. It just seems like people have opinions from every side and every angle about interracial dating. So do I think Kenneth and Brittany will make it to the altar and say yes? Maybe. They did tease in the preview that he kind of becomes distant once they get to the real world, and I'm kind of worried about that. It's a very short clip, but that seems like what'll be their main roadblock. I feel like if it weren't for that, like, they seem really compatible. They both love Jesus. So next, let's talk about Clay and AD, and you guys, this is where the mess begins. Let's start with Clay and AD, and we'll also in this section talk about Matthew and Amber, which is like the chain of this web. And Clay and AD are not as religious as our last couple, but he did end up proposing with a Bible verse, which like go off Christianity this season. And they definitely get the award for hottest couple on the season. That's for damn sure. Let me talk about AD first, because the way this queen stepped into the season and blew my wig right off. She is a former cheerleader and dancer for insert sport here. And she ends up in a love triangle. She's between Matthew and Clay. I'm so sorry to her because they're both messy and toxic in the end, and it's like, no, girl. And she talks so much about how, you know, she dates players or toxic people. She's always down to fix a hoe. This quote was one of my favorite quotes. If I see a red flag, I paint my nails to match. Like, oh, we stand a self-aware queen. I'm so sorry to her though, because she is somehow so hot, lives like in hot people land, you know, but then is so like smart and intelligent. She's been to therapy. She's very like healed seeming. Girl, you deserve the world. And these two men, oh, they are not giving. So her journey to Clay is a winding road, as Netflix likes to put it. At first, she is connecting with both Clay and Matthew. It's very weird because Matthew is so opposite from her. He's really socially awkward, kind of nerdy. Kind of reminds me of JP after he got out of the pods, not before. And then Clay is like so energetic, so charismatic, such a smooth talker. And he totally matches her physically, but you know, he has red flags that come out. So she initially gets turned off by Clay because he starts talking about looks. Clay kind of reminds me of Shake a little bit. The way Shake kind of reminded me of Tom Haverford from Parks and Rec. I feel like Clay is like this same type of guy almost, like just kind of into looks and the swag of it all, and like the finances, the luxury things. That's the impression he gives, and he at first is like, wow, I'm so vulnerable here that I can't rely on my looks or my finances. But I feel like in that statement, he's like implying he has good looks and finances. And at first I was like, okay, he's acknowledging, you know, he's having to rely on personality and that's hard. But then he starts talking about like how you look is important AD, trying to like fish for what she looks like, and she's immediately turned off because she is specifically in this experiment to not have someone just chasing her for her looks. That's how she has ended up in so many bad relationships. So she immediately gathers Clay and is like, no sir, we are not doing this. And I think truly the turning point for Clay was when he asked her, like, okay, who else are you having a connection with? Because he gets kind of jealous. She admits to him she has a connection with Matthew. He is gagged by that, and I feel like it really bruised his ego, and it was a very humbling moment for him because, you know, AD doesn't know what Matthew looks like, but he knows what Matthew looks like, and he is just like, what? And also, like, in the boys' dorm, Matthew has like no personality. He doesn't want to talk to any of the boys. Clay doesn't see the looks, doesn't see the personality, and he's just like, that's my competition. It like knocks him down a few pegs, and it's for the best because it ends up with like the outcome AD wanted. So it's only after that he kind of reflects, he cries with the boys, has like all this sensitivity come out. Shout out to the man with tinted glasses who was like, I'm always crying under these tinted glasses. Don't worry, man. That was so funny. I don't even know who that guy was, but like I cracked up at him talking about like under these tinted glasses, like I've been crying too. I'm making Clay feel better. But yeah, after Clay, you know, gets his emotions out, he goes back to AD, realizes like how shallow he was being about focusing on looks. I do think it was a total red flag. He was talking about like, oh, I like petite features. I was so glad AD put him in his place. And yeah, he apologizes to AD, and she's very happy to hear that he's sensitive. I really appreciated that AD vocalized that she likes a sensitive man. I think, especially in hot traditional people world, men are very like emasculated by appearing sensitive. She says it's like a great masculine trait. Like, that is important to be telling men that struggle with opening up. We need more hot girls like her endorsing sensitive men. Cheers to her. So as far as AD's journey with Matthew is just one of the weirdest contestants we've had on Love is Blind. He's up there with Andrew, like Fake Tears Man, because he is weird. He is like oddly self-aware, and I'm kind of living to see like the cameras get to somebody, because I'm just surprised it doesn't happen more often with these shows, seeing someone so aware of the cameras that like he can't let it go. I hated him kind of from the beginning, low-key. I did not like him. He was like asking girls questions, like he had numbered questions, and then he asked a question, she gave an answer, and then she asked the same question back, and he didn't have an answer, and he was just like, I wasn't expecting that. What the hell? Just answer the damn question honestly. And then I thought it was so rude when he walked out on Sarah Ann because she was being too chatty. I'm just like, ugh, whatever. And then I was like, oh, am I being too mean? He's socially awkward. You know, I'm socially awkward. I should be more forgiving. But in the end, I'm glad I hated him in the beginning. From early on, he mentions to AD, like, I'm not here to be a C-list celebrity. And at first I was like, okay, good. I guess a lot of people are, and they don't say it. But then he kept like commenting on the show and how he would be perceived by America out there. Where he lost AD truly was he had a very deep conversation with her, told her like, you know, you're the one for me, I want to leave with you. And then she gets back to the girls' room and finds out he's saying really similar things to Amber. Amber was another confusing contestant. At first I was like, is she a producer plant? Because she was very like competitive with AD and like, we'll see who Matthew chooses and things like that. And I was like, what is this girl doing? AD is like not being confrontational at all. But then once Amber compares notes with AD and they realize, you know, Matthew's kind of playing both of them, Amber turns into like such a girl's girl and is like, I am so sorry. I'll leave right now. And she does. She was just so sweet in the end and was like, I know I can be a blabbermouth, so she's self-aware. She's like apologizing for being so like loudmouthed about the connection her and Matthew had in front of AD, because AD was being more low-key. Amber's like, be so fucking for real right now with me. And she's like, slay. So Amber was giving like Gen Z vibes by the end, and now I'm team stan Amber. Even though we didn't get to see much of her, she left. I feel like she was kind of the Renee of the season a little bit. Just someone in the girls' dorm that like I wanted to see more of. I was really confused why we didn't see any pod dates between Amber and Matthew. We want to see if it's for real that he's telling Amber the same things he's telling AD. When AD confronts him, he does say he like has a connection with Amber, but what he was saying to her was not as serious as what he said to AD. Production released the footage. We can be the judge of that. And then it got even weirder because Matthew comes back to talk to AD for the final time. He found out that Amber left and he's like distraught. And AD's confused because AD thought she was number one. He starts going off about like, oh, America loves an underdog. America already loves me. Do not tell me what to think, sir. I'm America and I hated you the whole time, basically. And it was just interesting to see. It was kind of a psychological experiment going on Matthew because it's seeing how someone cracks, I think, under the situation of being in a production like this, and I kind of live for seeing this. It feels like a peek behind the curtain a little bit, but also good riddance. I'm glad he left. He says like he can't get over breaking somebody's heart on national TV, that being Amber. And when he leaves, he says he's gonna go get Amber. Maybe we'll see more of her. Maybe they're saving the pod footage for later in the season. Maybe we'll never see them again. I don't think I saw them in the preview, so back to AD and Clay. So they come back together after her mess with Matthew ends, and Clay apologizes and he proposes and she says yes. Unfortunately, like, I don't think this man is ready to get married. I'm so sorry to AD because she is an amazing woman, it seems like, but Clay just is so wishy-washy. Like, he keeps saying like, oh, I've changed, I don't care how you look, but I wonder what she looks like, and looks are so important to me. But I'm vulnerable now, and I love her for her. And it's like, but her looks. And like, he just keeps going back and forth. I'm like, guy, you're not ready for marriage. But I am really enjoying Clay because he's like so energetic, so funny. I think I really like people that come in so energetic, maybe because I have no energy myself, but he's just kind of goofy and like not self-aware. He's like the opposite of Matthew, honestly, in that way too. Like, fighting like a shallow side all the time. I really hope he like doesn't do anything so messy that like I start hating him, which is possible, very possible. He definitely has red flags all over the place. Again, I think he's like a little bit of a shake. Maybe, hopefully not as bad and not that level of degrading to women, but like we've already seen. So after they meet, of course, he's happy with how she looks because she's gorgeous. Them together are just like a gorgeous, gorgeous couple. Like, everyone else is over here on Love is Blind. They're over here on Too Hot to Handle Island. Like, that's how they look. Unfortunately, it's not all about looks as much as Clay wishes it was so. But they're very affectionate. He's smooth talking, joking with her, all that jazz. At a certain point, he like really wants to be baby. That's like part of their dynamic that comes out when they meet. He's literally like, I'm baby, and like cuddles up to her a lot. So I don't know where that's going, but I think that's going somewhere. On the honeymoons, of course, he is very impressed by her bikini body. And I did appreciate he did say like, oh, he's trying not to just sexualize her. That's what I'm saying, like, this man is like trying, but then he like says some shit and I'm like, oh god, not this. This couple is just so attractive. Like, the next morning after the first night, they're like, this is the real us. And they're just like hot people wearing glasses. I'm like, y'all look the same. And she's like, is this okay with you? And he's like, of course. And I'm like, bitch, you can't Clark Kent me. And this was the main red flag conversation they had. They talk about like how she has a great body. She works out a lot at the gym. She puts in hard work. They talk about like, oh, what if you got out of shape? And here comes Clay. I would tell you to go to the gym. And she's like, what if I'm pregnant and I have a big belly? And he's like, oh, I'm taking you to the gym. Be so fucking for real right now. No. Hot people like Clay don't realize, like, you know you're gonna age at some point. Like, you're gonna be old and wrinkly. You'll probably be a hot old man, but like, it's not gonna be so easy to be so taut. He's just like so obnoxious about this issue, and she's just like, that's mean. And he's kind of like, oh, I guess I'm too blunt. I need to work on my delivery. And I'm like, it's not just the delivery. I think it's a problematic stance to have when you're marrying someone, you know, in sickness and in health. Like, what do you think that means? In sickness and in health? You think in sickness you have like a 6-pack abs? This man is 0% ready for marriage. And she talks about her therapy journey and how it's really helped her. And like, I can totally tell, even before she talked about therapy, like, she's been to therapy. She just has such a good read on things that like I can tell she's worked on herself. And she's also like very confident. She's like, I've done the work. And she tells him directly, like, you should go to therapy too. And he really should. But is he gonna? I don't think so. They're such a good match physically, but like, the brain is not there. Once they meet the other couples and mingle, AD does admit to Jimmy that like Clay is a lot. Like in the pods he was a lot, but in person he's a lot. And I mean, after this conversation they just had about the gym and, you know, forcing her to be at the gym 24/7, I think it's very fair for her to say like, Clay, it's a lot to deal with right now. And Jimmy was like low-key flirting with her. Jimmy is like another guy. She wasn't part of his love triangle or anything. He's just kind of a dog, in my opinion, I think. Or it was kind of sad to me that like at this mingling party, Jimmy was ogling her, AD. Jaremy and Laura, another couple, were talking about like, oh, you should do a bean dip to AD, which never heard that in my life. I guess we'll get to the bean dip, but like it basically involved like touching her boob. And Laura had said it jokingly to Jaremy. I don't get the joke. I don't see the humor in it, because apparently Laura did that to AD in the girls' dorm. And so Jaremy tells AD like, haha, Laura told me to do a bean dip on you. I would never, because I'll get canceled, but and I just thought it was sad, like seeing a couple times of like AD getting like objectified. The amount that like a hot person like AD gets like objectified or sexualized, even in a joking way, is like obnoxious, and I hate that. And the sadder thing was that like AD was very used to it. You could tell with Jimmy, she like played along with this flirting, like in a nice way but respectful. She kind of had to navigate that with Clay too, because he was kind of like not pleased a man said something like that, but also like going to talk to Laura about it. It's kind of a nuanced dynamic going on, but I kind of picked up on it, and it's just like, I think to the regular person it feels like you're a hot person, why would you have any problems? But they face their own shit, I guess, especially women. Let's be clear about that. So do I think Clay and AD will make it to the altar? No, I don't think so. I don't think Clay is ready at all. In the preview it shows like he's kind of questioning marriage, like the idea of it, so I don't think it's gonna happen. I think AD is like miles ahead in her development and emotional maturity. So let's talk about Chelsea and Jimmy. And oh god, this, I need to make a part 2 to these videos. Do y'all want do y'all want these videos split? No, right? Like, even if it's a long video, like, you can just split it into parts, you know, yourself. So Chelsea and Jimmy are an engaged couple that both have other connections in the pod that are really strong. So both Chelsea and Jimmy are stuck between two people. So because of that, I want to talk first about Jessica, who is Jimmy's other connection. And Jessica, I called it from the cast reveal. Jessica was going to cause trouble for these boys because she looks already like almost like a Kardashian, like a Instagram influencer baddie. In the pods, she has more of like a nasally voice. She kind of reminds me of Jessica a little bit. Oh my god, Jessica! I was like, Jessica reminds me of Jessica from season 1. I didn't even realize. She is very, very beautiful, and I knew like once the men saw her, they would be thinking twice about what went on in the pod. I mean, at least from what we've seen so far, some of these men are a little bit shallow. But Jessica is very interesting because she's our first like featured contestant that has a child. She has a 10-year-old named Autumn. She had her when she was 18. She has a good co-parenting relationship. She was never in a long-term marriage or anything with that person. Jessica was really interesting. I'm sad she didn't get engaged because she had such a compelling backstory. I see why she was featured so much. She like grew up in the foster care system. Her dad was like in and out of jail. Her mom had issues with drugs. It was really, really tragic, and she ended up getting adopted by like her God-given family. A very, very compelling backstory. So she's into Jimmy. She didn't tell him about her daughter at first because she wanted him to get to know her. I think that's honestly a smart strategy. I think a lot of men would write her off for being a mother. When she finally tells him, he reacts very shocked and doesn't know what to do, which I think that's fair too. It's a fair reaction because it totally changes what life you're envisioning with this person, and like, you know, you have to decide if you want to be the dad who stepped up, literally. They're a package deal, as Jessica keeps saying. So I think it's a really big thing, and it's fair for Jimmy to like take a beat to think it through. But he ends up coming back to her and like being totally fine with it. They talk more about it. They find out like Jimmy's eldest sister was kind of in the situation like Autumn would be in, so it was kind of like he related in his own family. So they seem to be doing really well. They had a really strong connection. And then at a certain point, she gives him this letter that she wrote a while ago to her future husband, and it's a very like vulnerable thing. It's just like a very intense love letter, and it is there where he tells her like, I don't think I can tell you what you want to hear. They don't quite break up yet, but they get in a fight, and it's one of their final dates, so she's kind of worried because he does have another connection. I love Jessica, to be honest, because she's a glamour girl. Y'all know, every time there's a glamour girl, I don't care if she's a villain, I don't care if she's a hero, I stan the glamour girls. She won me over when she did that makeup routine with the fan and the mist. That's all I need. That's all I need to see. That's all I need to see. Stan Jessica. And so she's really hurt by Jimmy's reaction to the letter, isn't hopeful, and then the next time she sees him, they do break up. He's kind of emotional at first, and she's like, save me the pity party. And I was like, yes, girl. I think people do a lot with the theatrics on this show. And then she's pissed off and tells him like, you ruined the experience for me, which is dramatic, but I was living. And then she had my favorite moment of this season so far. Jessica tells Jimmy, when you realize what you missed out on, you are going to choke. You're going to need your EpiPen to open up your airways. A second motherquake has hit the pods. Jessica saying this, I just about died when that happened. My theory is Jimmy is a shallow man. I feel like the evidence is there. He is going to gag. And I just love that she said this. I love that she had the confidence, the audacity. Like 100%, he is going to choke. The country that went on with Jessica, like, I stan. So let me talk a bit about Jimmy, which I've talked about some, but like, Jimmy is a very normal looking guy. He's coworker energy, like I work with this man. And I was just surprised, you know, all the women were fighting for him. I guess, you know, the personality was doing the heavy lifting, but I just didn't find his personality that remarkable. And honestly, Jessica, she dodged a bullet. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing her again. We'll see her, but she's gonna get famous from this like that. She'll be fine, you know? So my theory about why I think Jimmy is shallow is because he's having two relationships with Jessica and Chelsea. Jessica seems to be stronger. I was pretty convinced they were gonna get engaged, and Chelsea seemed like the second choice. Until Chelsea had a moment where she talked about like, she's a flight attendant, so she sees a lot of people, and she mentioned like, oh, a lot of people say I look like Machine Gun Kelly's girlfriend, which, rude. If anything, Machine Gun Kelly is Megan Fox's boyfriend, you know. Anyway, so Chelsea admits that she might look like Megan Fox. To be fair, she is very modest about it and is like, people say it, but like, you know, I don't really see it. You don't get ideas, all these things. I feel like it was that comment that was a turning point, and he was suddenly like, I'm trying to see this Megan Fox situation. I think that was like the defining factor, and that's my theory about why Jimmy is shallow. I don't know, these women were dropping their panties for Jimmy, and I did not fully understand. Maybe he did have a nice voice, I guess, but he also would say things that, like, he said, oh, I normally like to be with women who let me lead 100% of the time. And I was just like, 100% of the time? Seems kind of like an unfair power dynamic to me. But anyway, so he chooses Chelsea. He never let the Megan Fox comment go. And I was kind of surprised by Chelsea too, because I feel like he kept talking about his troubles with Jessica with Chelsea, or he kept alluding to them. Like when Chelsea admitted she had been divorced before, he was just kind of like, oh, he had just heard that Jessica had a daughter, and to him that was like way bigger news, which it is. I think it would have been a very different story if he hadn't heard about Jessica's child. Chelsea at first is pretty hurt by that, but then they reconcile and they pretty much start rocky and then get strong. And Jimmy and Jessica start strong and then get rocky. I guess that's why Jimmy and Chelsea ended up engaged. Chelsea, man, she was between two guys, and I just thought the other guy was so much better. I loved him. Okay, so we talked about Jimmy. His reaction to her divorce news was very lackluster. She also had a connection with Trevor. I enjoyed Trevor a lot. From what we saw, he kind of feels like, you know, he's following that Julian Solomita blueprint, if you will, of his looks. He's beefy, has like kind of a mullet going on, mustache. He kind of gives like himbo vibes or something like that, where, you know, he looks big and tough, but is really sweet. He talks about loving romance movies, like The Notebook. Like, I don't even like The Notebook and those kinds of movies. So like, for a man to love that, like, good for him. And I feel like him and Chelsea's rapport was always positive, whereas with Jimmy, he'd be all like sad about his fight with Jessica, and Chelsea would be like confused and sad that he's not paying attention to her or whatever. So I was really digging Trevor, and Chelsea really had like prime pick because both guys told her they loved her. She got an I love you from two guys. Like, her personality was really carrying the pods, I guess. And she didn't say I love you back to either of them. She was waiting for the proposal. And I like Chelsea. From the cast reveal, I appreciated she had some tattoos. I'm looking for any signs of someone being alternative, and so she does seem like it. She seems like someone that has had a lot of jobs or maybe gets bored with jobs. She's a flight attendant, but also an event planner. She went to trade school, which I don't know if that was for flight attendant or something else. She was a yoga instructor or is one. So she seems like someone that like just dabbles in a lot. I think she has her issues that come out later. But honestly, I was shocked she chose Jimmy. Like, her and Trevor had so many cute moments. Honestly, with him, she like casually mentioned her divorce because she thought she had already told them, and he was just like, wait, what? You were divorced? I didn't realize. But the way he reacts is so kind. He just like jokes about it right away, like really at ease with it all. Especially compared to Jimmy, who had like a very bizarre reaction. And I really like that Trevor was realistic and said like, people want this fairy tale, but if we're here in this experiment, people have past, and it would be more shocking that people don't have like past with long-term relationships. Somebody scoop him up, please. And then they also talk about how Chelsea like is so attracted to mullets, and he's just like shook because he's like, what? A girl attracted to mullets? And he's like, I have one. And she's just like, are you joking? You better not be joking. So I thought they were doing so good. I was like, they're so cute together and they'd be perfect. They would have been a good match. I'm getting sad about it all over again. And Trevor is so for sure with her. He starts getting worried that Jimmy's gonna swoop in, and Jimmy does. When they finally have their breakup, he asks her like, if I had asked first before Jimmy, would you have said yes to me? And she's just silent. Question mark? Like, would you have? Because that's very silly if you would just say yes to the first person who proposed. That's just like a logistics issue. That was weird. My heart broke into a million pieces because Chelsea had given him like a bracelet. It's one of those long distance technology things that like if you tap it, it vibrates on the other person, and you can see if like you're thinking about the other person. And in their final date, like he was wearing the bracelet but she wasn't, and he was like, I tapped my bracelet so many times, and she's just like crying. That was so sad. Honestly, this breakup was kind of giving Zach and Bliss a little bit because Chelsea was really emotional breaking up with Trevor, like too emotional. When this happens, I mean, we learned kind of from Zach and Bliss, she seemed to be like regretting the breakup as it was happening. It was tragic. It was so tragic. Oh, Trevor, please save him. I mean, it's not that sad. Whatever. He'll find somebody, you know. He's famous now. He's famous now. He'll find somebody. Once Chelsea and Jimmy meet, it's probably the most awkward meeting of the season, the most awkward reveal. They both keep telling themselves they're so happy. They're like trying to convince themselves that they're so happy when it doesn't seem like it. When they're doing the reveal, they're cutting to his interview, and Jimmy's like, I've never been more sure that Jet is, I mean, Chelsea is someone I can literally talk to about anything. He fucks up the name. I take thee Ross. I take thee Rachel. I just feel like Jimmy and Chelsea physically feel mismatched. Like, they don't seem that into each other. At their meeting, he also admits to her that he almost went home that morning and left her high and dry, basically. And she's just like, that would have sucked. I think that starts him off on a bad foot, and feeds her insecurity that seems to already be there, but flares up quite a bit at the honeymoons. And also, they both kind of bring up being disappointed in the other's looks, like implying it in their interviews. She just says like, oh, we didn't talk about his looks. And then he's like, we talked about her looks, but she lied. She told me she looked like Megan Fox. I already knew he'd never let that comment go, but then he confirmed it literally verbatim, and I was like, spotted you a mile away. He's a shallow man. He's lustful. And honestly, she does kind of look like Megan Fox. Like, she has a similar, like, face structure. Like, the eyes and eyebrows are very... I definitely see it for her. So, in the honeymoons, they're kind of rocky because at first he confronts her, like, about the Jessica thing. Because basically, Chelsea told a girl, Laura, Jimmy said, I love you to me. And this was when he was between Jessica and Chelsea. Then Laura went quickly and snitched to Jessica and was like, girl, you need to leave because just trust me. Which was weird of Laura anyway, to be like, girl, just trust me, just leave. Like, why would she just leave? Because some bitch told her to. Like, that was strange. But anyway, so Jimmy was like, so did you run into the girls' room and just yell like, Jimmy said he loved me? And Jessica found out that way. And Chelsea was like, no. She explained the situation and Jimmy was like, oh, okay. I believe you. He does mention, though, that the comment Jessica made about her own looks, the when you see me, you'll choke. Queen, slay. This is really planting this seed of insecurity and watering it in Chelsea's mind because Jimmy doesn't know what Jessica looks like, but Chelsea knows what Jessica looks like. He's thinking about this comment she made about how her looks were so superior. I think Chelsea now is like, oh shit, he's probably gonna have to see her. What's gonna happen there? Definitely, I feel for Chelsea. I feel like there's these nuggets of insecurities and vibes she's picking up with Jimmy that I don't think even Jimmy seems to be aware of. She keeps like questioning him like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure about me? And he's like, kind of implying like, I kind of don't recognize your voice from the pods and you were always laughing, but now you're not. And she's like, yeah, that was all fun and now it's serious. And I don't know, it's just kind of awkward between them. And at the same time, they have this facade of like, I'm so happy, I'm so happy, I'm so happy. You're the most beautiful person. And it's just like, the vibes are off. The de-dragging, like hygiene parts of going to bed are not the most sexy, but he talks about like how he has psoriasis and asked to borrow her lotion and is basically like, I've never used lotion in my life. Sir, we can tell. And he's also like, oh, the first thing I noticed about you, oh, actually, I'll keep it PG and say your teeth. And then she's like, what's the not PG thing? And he's like, your boobs. See? More evidence. He's lustful. And yeah, like the next day, she was kind of self-conscious about being in a bathing suit. I mean, she mentions, you know, she is tall, has a thicker body. I fully get it. It's hard. It's hard out here for the thicker girls sometimes with societal expectations and genetics we can't help. But I feel bad for her because I feel like Jimmy is trying to reassure her every way he can. I mean, I think she's annoyed she always has to prompt it. I'm assuming she wants him to be saying it all the time without her having to ask. And also he kind of keeps implying almost like he liked her better in the pods. But this is all like under the surface stuff going on. This isn't like explicit stuff they're saying. They almost remind me of Taylor and JP last season, just not as severe and not as like angry, but just a little bit of that unspoken thing. And I feel like Jimmy planted the seeds and watered them a little bit, but she rolled with them. And it's like such a spiral to be in that insecurity mindset. I feel for her, but I think she's really letting the insecurity lead her. Once they mingle with the other couples, there's yet more evidence for my case of, what was it? Jimmy being a shallow man. First of all, he's like betting the boys, like, oh, I have the smoothest relationship here. And it's like, boy, if you only knew, you have the rockiest. And then he has this moment where he comments to Chelsea, like, oh my God, AD is stacked. Like, AD's body. Because AD's body is T. I get it. But Chelsea's kind of uncomfortable by this, and the way she diffuses it, which is kind of smart. I thought it was very smooth socially. She kind of yells out like, oh my God, AD, you look so good. We're just admiring how good you look. How do you get a body like that? And AD, very used to it, and she even mentions, like, I'm used to this. She's like, really hard work and going to the gym a lot. I think in the real world, this interaction is not that big a deal, in my opinion, and in my relationships. But in this situation, it's a little weirder just because they've all dated each other. That's one thing. Another thing is, like, this relationship is really new. So, you know, you should be more tentative with those types of things. Maybe save it for the after party and be like, damn, AD and Clay, you know, they're a hot couple or whatever. But then Jimmy makes the situation way worse by going up to AD and apologizing, being like, oh, Chelsea's embarrassing me. How embarrassing. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make a comment. And he starts like spinning her around and like checking her out and then like talking to her. It kind of did seem flirtatious to me, and I think that crossed the line. I think that's weird to keep like the comment going, the conversation going. It could have been less weird if it just stayed at the first interaction, but then he made it way weirder, and now I'm like confused why he was flirting with AD. That solidified my case, Your Honor, that I keep wanting to call him JP. Jimmy is a lustful, shallow man. He has sinning on the mind. And it also kind of felt like he was a little flirty to Laura. I forgot what the interaction was, but I just feel like he was kind of living for just like hanging out with hot girls at this party. And Chelsea definitely picks up on that. She's upset about that. She confronts him after the party, said she was so uncomfortable by the whole interaction, that he couldn't read the room. And Jimmy defends himself by saying, like, I bragged about you all night to everybody, and I didn't feel like I needed to be right by your side because I feel like we have a really strong relationship. Honestly, Jimmy was bragging about her all night and telling everyone how happy he was, how amazing his relationship was, even though it's all lies. He was doing that. So, like, I'm confused what she wants from him because he's apologizing. Maybe not the best apologies. It's kind of giving, I'm sorry you felt that way, but he tries to apologize and say, like, sorry, I didn't realize that interaction. And he keeps reassuring her, like, I'm so happy. I'm so lucky to be with you. I'm really happy to be with you. Like, just keeps reassuring. So after that point, I'm just like, what else does she want? 'Cause she keeps fighting after that point. I'm like, what else does she want? I don't know. I think it's just the insecurity taking over, the inner saboteur. I do think she's picking up on some real vibes from him of something. I'm picking up the vibes. I think he's shallow. She's picking them up, even though he's reassuring. I don't know. There's something like she's picking up on, I think, that she's not liking. There's not a great match, and I have to see more to see, like, their issues actually play out, because right now they're really faking it till they make it. Will they make it to the altar? I don't think so. They both have these other strong contenders that I feel like fit what they want more. Jimmy seems to just want a hot woman, and when he sees Jessica, he's gonna choke. And Trevor is a really nice guy, seems really reassuring, and I feel like if they meet up, she's gonna really like that. That's gonna get messy, and they're not gonna last, which I think is for the best. The preview for them gets really spicy too, and Chelsea's literally like, I know you fucked her. I think about Jessica, I'm assuming. Which I'm like, Jessica, come on, have some standards. Sorry, I just don't like Jimmy that much. I have to not like some people. And finally, let's talk about our most forgettable couple, and that's Jaremy and Laura. They were in a love triangle as well. I think Jaremy and Laura are both kind of boring. Sorry, no shade. There's always that one forgettable couple, I feel like, on these seasons, and they never make it to the saying yes. They're like that one couple in the first season. I always remember them because they were so forgettable, and I never remember their names. I think one of them was Kenny. Jaremy has a self-proclaimed big personality, which I don't think it's that big. I think it's medium. And he's between Laura and Sarah Ann. Laura, they mostly connect over cleanliness. She's just really obsessed with cleanliness, and he has robot vacuums and allegedly an immaculate house, which I would like to see it to believe it. But they really bond over that. And one thing I really liked about Jaremy and Laura, I will give it to them, they did talk about holidays, and they both don't like the Christmas holidays in particular. And I really appreciated this conversation because I very much relate to that. I struggle with the holidays, and it's really tough because it's not something people talk about a lot. Most people really love the holidays and just talk about all the things they're up to and the family stuff, and for some of us that's just a sadder time and like difficult for a myriad of reasons. He talks about how he talked to his grandma about missing Christmas when he was a kid, when there was more family around and stuff, and the grandma told him basically like, as you grow up, you have to make this Christmas, or you have to make the holiday what you want it to be. That was an interesting note to end the conversation on too, because I was like, yeah, that's something I feel like I've learned too, and I'm still figuring out. After a certain point, you're not a kid anymore. You have to figure out what is the holiday to you. It can be hard to like make new traditions, but they both agree that that's like something they would want to do. Unfortunately, that relationship doesn't seem that promising later, but I appreciated this bonding moment. I appreciated this conversation, and shout out to all the people that have a tough time during the holidays for whatever the reason. I feel you. So moving on to Sarah Ann, who is this like mysterious love triangle with Jaremy and Laura. I couldn't with Sarah Ann. She's Christian. Okay, another one. She's also self-proclaimed conservative and self-proclaimed a patriot. Maybe let's go back to not knowing they're conservative, because that really taints my view of these people. She believes abortion is wrong, which the pro-life movement was created pretty recently as a political tool, and that's the tea.
And that's the tea.
But whatever. He doesn't pick Sarah Ann in the end. He picks Laura. He also didn't give like a reason for breaking up with her. He was just like, I just have to trust my gut. And he was like hiding behind the couch when he broke up with her, basically. I was like, okay, guy. So Sarah Ann back in the girls' room is like, it's all right, you know, it didn't work out. To Laura, she has this ominous moment where she's like, I'll have my moment. And I knew it because they put music under it to hint that it's not over till it's over. Yeah, we're gonna see Sarah Ann again. And the preview showed us quite a bit that he's gonna hang out with her and be into her, I guess. And she says he was talking to Sarah Ann till 5 a.m. We're gonna see Sarah Ann again. She's coming with a vengeance. At first when I saw Sarah Ann, I was like, this girl looks like she should be on The Bachelor. And then I was like, wait, she looks like that girl who was on The Bachelor, who ended up with a guy that like lived in a van. Don't remember her name, couldn't tell you, but she looks just like her. Is she her? Is she rebranding? Did the van guy not work out? Oh, I low-key forgot to talk about Jaremy and Laura and the honeymoons. At first they start off very affectionate. They're very happy with each other's looks and everything. They seem like a good match. But then in the honeymoons, he starts getting kind of annoying and kind of annoying her on purpose. He's like, I want a backyard with like bows and arrows and a bunch of motorcycles, and she's just like, okay. He seems to just do stuff to annoy her, which is so annoying. Some guys think that's what a relationship is, but no. And I already talked about their awkward interaction at the party, that she told them to bean dip AD and he told AD that, and it was weird, and they kind of bickered. They're in the honeymoons, already bickering, already she's annoyed with him. Like, there's no hope for this couple. I don't think they're gonna make it. So finally, we're done. Longest fucking video ever, but they dropped like a record amount of episodes for the first batch. Like 6 episodes. That's a lot we had to cover. So if you're still here, you're a real one. I would love to hear your thoughts about this season so far. Who are you rooting for? What couples are you into? Who do you think is gonna make it? Who do you think won't make it? What were your standout moments of the first 6 episodes? I would love to hear about it in the comments below. I don't always respond to all comments, but like I promise y'all that y'all's opinions like change my mind on things, and y'all make interesting points and cases, and whether I agree, disagree, feel neutral, I think about it. I'm interested to hear what y'all think of the season. I always make these videos so fast too that I don't know the fan reaction, so if I loved someone everyone hates, I'm sorry. If I hate someone everyone loves. I'm sorry. Sort of. Not really. Who cares? So I'll be making a part 2 when the next few episodes drop. In that one, I'll talk more about fan reactions so far once people have a chance to, you know, watch the show. And then the day the finale drops, that evening, I will be doing a live stream to talk about the final results of the season. Just like I did last season, I found it to be a fun kind of post-season party. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos whenever I feel like it about TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous on Instagram or Twitter to keep up with me, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!